Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
So the story goes, the Ark of the Covenant, it's lost. Some people say it's in Ethiopia, and then there's another story, supposedly Muhammad.
Okay.
He went, found the Ark of the Covenant, brought it back to Mecca, and buried it.
Wait, that's ours.
But this is where it gets weird. They were building a new mosque in Mecca in like 2015, and they supposedly dug it up without knowing it was there. And as soon as they reached it, there was a giant sandstorm that came blowing in. This crane fell, killed 100 people.
Oh my gosh.
And then all the people around it said that it looked like a plasma explosion shot into the sky.
Oh my gosh.
And then shortly after that, a connection happened. Kirill, who's the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, met with the Pope and supposedly grabbed the Ark of the Covenant, and straight from the port in Saudi Arabia, the Russian Navy ship went straight to Antarctica. But the theory is that the Pope knew where the Ark of the Covenant was and teamed up with the Russian Orthodox Church, took the Ark of the Covenant from Mecca and placed it in Antarctica.
What?
That's weird.
Weird stuff.
That's a lot of land, and that's a lot of money.
This one's a little hard to have an opinion on. There certainly could be something to this, but it's just riddled with theories and guesses that have nearly no evidence to back anything up. According to scripture, the last known location of the Ark of the Covenant was in Solomon's temple. In 587 BC, the Babylonians, led by Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Solomon's temple. However, they apparently made records of everything that they took back to Babylon, and the Ark of the Covenant was not in these records. That pretty much makes it impossible to track down. You're talking about a span of nearly 370 years between the construction and the destruction of Solomon's temple, and the Ark was placed there at the dedication of the temple upon its completion. It could have been removed at any point before that temple got destroyed and just not recorded in history. Unless it just mysteriously resurfaces, I don't think we'll ever get an answer to this one.
Every ancient alphabet, bar none, has always from day one with each letter had a mysterious number associated with the letter. The study of that code is called Gematria, atomic mass of the elements. The numbers of the atomic mass are the numbers that equate to the mysterious letters in the ancient alphabets. What that means is when you look at human DNA or the DNA of any life, the numbers that equate to those become 1, 5, 6, and 3. Literally reads, literal. God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. It is in Hebrew and Aramaic and Sanskrit, 3 of the root languages. If there's an intentionality underlying life itself and human life specifically, it would make tremendous sense to me that who or whatever is responsible would somehow have left a sign. Why place that signature into something that can crumble over a few thousand years, like a temple wall, or into the pages of a book that can be destroyed? Why not put it in the creation itself?
That is absolutely a fascinating detail to our DNA, but I just do not get this gematria stuff. I put this in here because I want to start familiarizing myself with it to see if there's anything to it. When it comes to this gematria stuff, I have a sort of cognitive dissonance situation going on. I don't see the value in these numbers and people correlating them with certain meanings, but I fully believe that ancient languages held deeper meaning than our languages do today, and I think those meanings had something to do with math. I just don't know what that connection is, and I feel like this gematria stuff is an attempt to figure out that meaning. I'm just not convinced yet of its value, I guess, but I'm trying to broaden my perspective on it because it's not really fair for me to write something off without at least trying to figure out what it is first. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at berry-stepp.com.
There are these artifacts that exist from, I would say, pre-dynastic times up until the very earliest of dynasties, like the Old Kingdom, right? But you talk going back 15 period for those. Some of these have been found in sites that are dated back 15,000 years.
So they've been found in sites that date back...
Primitive burials.
Yeah.
That date back to 15,000, and everything else about these burials, they seem Mesolithic, right? It's a guy curled up in the fetal position in a shallow grave. A place called Toshka, for example, is one of these sites. They found this, and there's primitive pottery in there. Very much matches the, Mesolithic times.
So
but they also
mixed with the primitive pottery. And keep in mind, this is not pottery.
This is not pottery. These are vases that are made from extremely hard types of stone. Granite, diorite, porphyry,
If I'm an archaeologist and I see some pottery and I see this vase, I see it in this gravesite, I'm going to go, okay, it's probably made around the same time. This all makes sense to me. I'm not an expert in geology. I don't know what this stone is here. That stone. What's that?
Engineering.
Or engineering.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to throw them all together. This makes sense. Then you get some engineering nerds to look at it and they go, wait a minute. This isn't pottery.
Yeah.
This is granite.
So these vases display remarkable engineering characteristics, also precision. Most of these were probably inherited. Like he didn't have them made. They have to admit that. And they say, well, they were probably first and second dynasty, which is also nonsense because they go back thousands and thousands of years before that. So but after that period, like the third and fourth dynasty, this is what's so important about these vases, I think, is that they kind of disappear from the record. Like they don't keep making them. I think they had a functional purpose. I think that's why they developed this level of precision.
And that's a reasonable argument.
It is.
I think whatever group had possession of that vase and left it in that pit to be dug up all those years later were probably just as confused by it and amazed at its precision whenever they found it. I'm betting that those polished vases were left over from a more advanced civilization, and then they were found by this younger, less civilized group who then tried to make copies of what they had found. It just wouldn't make sense any other way. If they had the ability to make these things themselves, then why would they have made all of these crappier versions that are way less impressive? I'm betting the reason we find these things all over the place, seemingly always buried with lesser quality vases, is just simply that all these different civilizations found these things laying all over the place after some great cataclysm because these vases were made to last. Then they just simply tried to make their own versions of what they found.
The Vajra implosive turbine.
The Vajra implosive turbine.
The Vajra is
What the hell is that?
I was afraid you were going to ask me. Well, the Vajra was Indra's weapon.
Who?
Indra.
Who's Indra?
He's one of the Hindu gods.
Look
So
at it.
Indra wielded the Vajra. That was the source of his power.
When was Indra around?
Well, I mean, he's mythical, so
Indra is the king of the Devas, godlike deities, and Svarga, heaven, in Hinduism. He's associated with the sky, lightning, weather, thunder, storms, rains,
See?
river flows, and war.
or you might say an ancient Hindu thunderstorm generator.
The Vajra is a legendary and ritualistic weapon, symbolizing the properties of a diamond and a thunderbolt.
Well, they call it a weapon, yes. Note again that Indra is the god of lightning and thunderstorms. That might be a clue right there, but it was the source of power
Right.
for Indra.
I want to be careful here because I certainly do not intend to speak ill of Randall Carlson. I just have too much respect for the guy. I did look into this though, and while it's highly interesting, I have my doubts that this Vajra implosive turbine thing is anything more than just a way for the inventor to try to raise money. He's claiming that he can build this machine that can create 0-point energy by harnessing plasmoids, and then those plasmoids can release energy through implosion. However, the inventor of this thing, some Australian engineer named Malcolm Bindall, has published absolutely 0 studies that can be produced by another team outside of his own. That's usually a pretty good indication that there's some junk science going on. Hopefully I'll be proven wrong and this guy's about to revolutionize the way that we harness energy, but I am not getting my hopes up.
I came across a story that was insane. It's about events that happened in the years 1811 and 1812. But in March 1811, something appears in the sky, which was called the Great Comet. So after it got super close to the Earth on October of 1811, 2 months later, in December 16th, 1811, there was massive earthquakes that happened in the New Madrid fault line. The earthquakes that happened were, they said, on record, the worst earthquakes America's ever experienced.
Wow.
They said the bells in like Boston were ringing for like a week straight. I just thought it was crazy, man. I've never heard this story ever. The biggest earthquakes America's ever seen, the longest duration of earthquakes the world has ever seen. But what was crazy about this Great Comet thing, this orbit, or the orbit of this Great Comet, happens every 3,065 years. So the last time people on Earth saw this comet was during the time of King Ramses II in Egypt. But that was also the time of Moses, which I found super interesting. Yeah. Like I'm thinking of like the plagues, the sky going dark, and I don't know. I just thought that was a weird connection.
Just listen to this. December 16th, 1811, the first major quake struck, estimated at a magnitude of 7.5 to 8. The Mississippi River was thrown into chaos, with eyewitnesses describing it flowing backward temporarily due to the upheaval of the riverbed and the creation of temporary waterfalls. January 23rd, 1812, a second significant quake hits, further disrupting the region. February 7th, 1812. The most intense of the trio, with estimates also around 7.5 to 8, caused widespread destruction. The ground liquefied, forming sand volcanoes and massive fissures, some miles long, opened up. Settlements like New Madrid were devastated. Hundreds of aftershocks continued for months, reshaping the landscape. These quakes remain among the strongest ever recorded in the contiguous U.S. And then I found this on the Great Comet of 1811. Discovered on March 25th of the year, the Great Comet of 1811 became visible to the naked eye by late summer. It reached peak brightness in October with a tail stretching over 100 degrees across the sky, among the longest ever recorded. It was visible for over 260 days. That's insane.
I'm just gonna say it. This shouldn't exist. This place shouldn't be here. Machu Picchu isn't even the only city in the area that's 8,000 feet high. Yana Picchu is even higher. Before we try and explain how they got the rock to do that, you gotta explain why it was a priority to put doorways that go nowhere in the temple. This rock right here is what really gets me though. How do you get that up there? How did they know the same techniques as another culture across the globe? Why is the older stuff more advanced than the newer stuff? I don't see iPhones getting worse. I wouldn't know how to get water up here, but their fountains still work. We only know how they did it because we 3D scanned it. Not only did they know how to get it up there, they delivered it to the citizens via art. No one gives these guys enough credit. They thought these were for food or like grain, grinding grain up. They fill up with water one day and someone notices the angle at which they reflect. We built them to observe sections of the sky during specific times of the year through the windows of the surrounding building. Then we realize the whole place is aligned to the sky, celestial events. Here's the deal. When someone comes in and takes all your stuff, then enslaves your people, they get to write your story and make your people look like idiots. South America, Africa, India. Strange that they all have some form of this guy. All of them just so happen to have the most unexplainable stuff. Utterly unsatisfactory explanations for what it was. All of which make the natives look inferior. Tell you what doesn't lie. A big old rock.
I'm betting that the doorways that seem to go nowhere housed statues at some point and they were pillaged. Every moderately important site throughout history seems to be robbed the moment somebody discovers it. And look at all the decorative carvings that they have literally built right into the landscape. I think missing statues makes a lot of sense. And I know that the point of that video was that older civilizations were more advanced than the younger ones. And that point is not missed on me. I just feel like you all likely view that as somewhat common knowledge at this point. I just wanted to throw in my idea for those apparently useless doorways. They all look like a statue niche to me. What do y'all think they were for?
This is an engine. I'm assuming it came out of a craft, a big one, by the size proportional differences, probably 300 feet plus, the length of a football field. Well, therefore, it's got occupants. What in God's name you done with them? Well, that was the wrong thing to say, because they are up on the engine coming after me, and it's time to leave. Well, when I bend down to get off the engine, I put my hands back on the engine. Something interesting. Instead of the nice smooth wave lines, they would now look like small tornadoes coming off all my fingertips, moving through the metal. And I pulled my hands back, put them back on. There they were, but they were starting to calm down a little bit. And then I realized what this thing was. They grabbed hold of me, the Air Force guys did. We got back in the golf cart and we were riding back up to the surface. And I was sitting there thinking, I just realized what this engine is. It's a symbiotic engine. The engine is alive. It is an engine that's capable. The reason they couldn't figure out the firing order is that the tubing that was cascading all over its body looked like the same pattern you would have from a brainstem of a neurosynaptic ordering firing order. So what's happening is when the pilots sit down in their seats, their thought waves drive the engine. When I first touched the engine, I was curious and awed by it. The wavelengths were smooth off my fingers. When I was getting down from it, I was totally angry. The engine was not picking up radiation heat waves. It was picking up mental fault energy. That engine is capable of a symbiotic relationship with the pilots. That's why they couldn't figure out the firing order. They said there was no wiring or circuitry. No, the pilots' brains are the wiring and the circuitry. The engine needs them in order to do all of its functions. In return, the pilots know exactly what the engine feels and how the spacecraft feels. The entire craft is probably symbiotic. Now, before you sit there and blow this off like it's just a bunch of science fiction, let me bring you up to date here to current events. I just left Princeton University. There's a Dr. John up there, Robert John, and he runs the Pear Research Institute. They have a contract from McDonnell Douglas, you ever heard of them? Small aerospace company, to build mental shielding for firing systems on the new F-22 fighters. A fighter that is so sensitive, when he straps on his helmet, just like the Apache helicopter, you turn your head this way, the gun mounts follow your head. This firing system now links to your brain. Foxfire, Clint Eastwood. Where do you think the Hollywood's getting their ideas? McDonnell Douglas is under construction building a symbiotic relationship firing control system. Where did they get their idea? I wonder. Could have been back in June 1971, or God knows how long they've had this engine. However, it's reality. We have symbiotic engines in aeronautics. We're moving into that area right now with the F-22 and beyond.
I wouldn't even know how to go about trying to research this guy's claims. Even if he is telling the truth, that's not something they're going to allow you to read about on Google. Just suspending my disbelief for a second, though, this would make a lot of sense. The idea of this itself would be the ultimate aircraft. If you have a craft that can literally react to your thoughts without any input from your hands, you wouldn't have a need to advance beyond that. It sounds like he's describing the most technologically advanced craft that could even be conceived of. Just imagine if they could establish a connection with this engine telepathically. That's a technology I certainly don't want any federal government to have.
These are some of the biggest mountains in the United States. The only problem is they don't belong here.
In the center of the United States, almost halfway between the Atlantic and the Pacific, are 58 of North America's tallest mountains.
The only problem is, according to geologists, they shouldn't exist.
Yet here they are, 58 mountains towering 14,000 feet above sea level, all in the state of Colorado, hundreds and hundreds of miles from the nearest tectonic plate boundary.
The easiest way I know how to explain it is like a car collision. You get two big heavy objects collide into each other and you get crumpling. That explains pretty much how all mountain ranges are formed. The weird thing about the Rocky Mountains is if the collision happened over here, the Rocky Mountains formed all the way over here.
Because the nearest tectonic plate boundary is the San Andreas Fault in California, 800 to 1,000 miles to the west. So how did these mountains get here?
The mountains of Colorado should be about the same height as the Black Hills of South Dakota.
This is Lon Abbott, professor of geology at the University of Colorado Boulder.
It turns out that for a number of different reasons, we know that there had to be some second uplift event that created the mountains we see today, and it didn't involve that plate convergence. And we do not actually understand exactly what it is and when it happened.
Over half of the tallest mountains in the United States are here in Colorado, and geologists disagree on how they got here. The most popular theory is flat slab subduction.
Most mountain ranges are formed when one tectonic plate, usually an oceanic plate, subducts or slides under a continental plate. The oceanic plate, being harder and denser, plunges at a pretty deep angle, melts in the heat of the Earth's magma, and pushes up lots of hot molten material, creating volcanoes, mountain ranges, and the like. This is how mountain ranges like the Sierra Nevadas in California and the Andes in South America were formed. But to explain what's going on over in Colorado, hundreds of miles from tectonic plate boundaries, most geologists favor a flat slab subduction theory.
The idea is that a young buoyant oceanic plate plunged underneath the continental plate at a shallow angle, about like a spatula underneath a layer of gooey pancakes.
This long shallow plate slid under the continent for a long way, pushing up mountains all along the way until it reached Colorado, where it hit something hard, pushing up the Rocky Mountains. That sort of explains these mountains. The only problem is, no other tectonic slabs have behaved that way, and even if that is how these mountains were formed, it doesn't explain why they are so big. Flat slab subduction could explain these mountains if they were around 7,000 feet above sea level, which is about half of what we actually find here in Colorado. To explain the rest of the growth, scientists believe there was a second major growth period that gave us the mountains we see today.
It turns out that for a number of different reasons, we know that there had to be some second uplift event. The mountains of Colorado, they should be 7,000 feet, not 14,000 feet. So something else caused the Colorado Mountains to become 14ers. And we do not actually understand exactly what it is and when it happened.
So the reality is, we don't fully understand why the Rocky Mountains are where they are or how they got to be so tall, but they're here, and because they're here and because they're some of the tallest in the country, that means people want to climb them, and not just some of them, all of them.
I think the most fascinating part of that video is that a bunch of geologists are saying, I don't know. That almost never happens. We almost always, at the very least, get a harebrained theory that makes no sense being peddled as hard fact. This is a new mystery to me, but I think it may be a clue to something bigger. We have the mud flood stuff and all this other evidence that shows that some sort of crazy geological event happened in the Earth's past, buildings that seem out of place in time, and now I find out that we have mountains right here in this country that are technically 2 times bigger than they should be able to get. I can't help but feel like this might be connected in some way and may be some sort of a clue to help us figure some of this stuff out. Something clearly happened on this Earth that modern man has zero explanation for.
Philip K. Dick was in fact beamed by the Black Knight, which is this alien satellite, extraterrestrial satellite that's been floating around the planet in a polar orbit. It's in a very odd pattern. So it's hard to follow, hard to predict exactly, and it's fairly small. Philip K. Dick, it beamed information to him. They definitely communicated with him. All the books and stuff that he was writing was just all this, weird sort of stream of consciousness download that was a combination of what was coming into his brain and how his own creative process was dealing with it and how he was interacting with it. And it's just going to keep doing that. It's just going to keep talking to people. And astronaut Gordon Cooper did get to fly by it and seemed to be kind of glowing or pulsing and seemed to have, a presence to it. But that was about all he noticed.
And there it goes.
But what we have determined over time, what we know is it is a satellite of much, much ancient origin. Some people have said 13,000 years. We don't think so. We think over 100,000 years. It does seem to have an operational artificial intelligence on board, which has been recording data and information on planet Earth for a long time, for as long as it's been here. It does not seem to be sending a signal out into space anymore, nor does there seem to be any signal coming from space to it anymore. So we believe that whatever communication that it was having with its home source has stopped.
Okay, playing along with this idea, I'm about to say something that may sound completely ridiculous, but I'm just trying to get through all the bad theories so we can narrow it down to the good ones. They keep calling this thing a satellite, but only because of its orbit. What if this isn't just something that got caught in our orbit, but was placed there from below? What if this is literally a satellite like what SpaceX is sending up, only this one doesn't need a balloon to stay in orbit? What if this was sent up by the same people that we see flying around in these UFOs? What if the technology that we need nearly 12,000 satellites orbiting our planet in order to pull off, they can do with one much more advanced satellite? Reports claim that the thing orbits in irregular patterns, so it may be turning on its own, and the photos that were taken of it were reportedly approximately 250 miles up, pretty much exactly where the SpaceX Starlink satellites are. So it's clearly in what Elon Musk might call an ideal height. Maybe this thing just goes around scanning and taking notes on us and reporting back to whoever created it about changes in our landscape or advances in our building techniques. That's just an idea, and I'm still not certain that I even consider this theory likely anymore. The lack of any actual photos of this thing being posted online anywhere by an amateur astronomer at the very least would suggest it's more myth myth than observable reality. I'm just saying, with as many people as we have out there with a telescope nowadays, we would have at least one photo of this thing by now. Just look at how many new UFO photos we get every week.
As someone who read the Book of Enoch and told you that mermaids are real and what they really are, I 100% believe that the elites are eating mermaids, and I've actually been telling you this. When I say the elites, the reptiles, the real fallen angels that fell from heaven and became these diabolical Anunnaki, ancient Mesopotamia, Book of Enoch grifters, they exist. If you are not on the side of TikTok where there was a gentleman who claimed he went to a dinner party where they unveiled they would eat mermaids and tried to get him to eat them, and when he went and tried to leave, he walked into a cupboard where he saw actual mermaids waiting to be eaten, you're missing out. Mermaids are in the Book of Enoch, but they are the children of fallen angels and the angels that came to earth pretending to be God and actually mated with other species. They mated with fish, they mated with goats, they mated with horses. That's why there are different types of Nephilim and different types of giants and these creatures that were left out of the Bible completely. But mermaids have always been on my list of being real, as I keep telling you guys. The Book of Enoch, it talks about how mermaids or sirens were used for more than just seduction. The Book of Enoch, they are portrayed as completely different creatures. Now, the elites ingest more than just mermaids as creatures. You thought they got the power to sing melodies and actually take your mind somewhere else spiritually through a gift that came from God? Don't get me wrong, there are some that are endowed, but the gift of the fallen was music and seduction and jewelry and basically everything that we use, makeup. It was given to women by fallen angels. I'm gonna have to do a part 2 because the mermaid dinner party is real, and I'm gonna reveal why.
It's so much that we could say about this situation, y'all, specifically me, because I've touched on this situation more than once, right? But you have to understand that these beings are here, have been here, and they ain't going nowhere, okay? And then we have to take into account who it is that you think God is to begin with. You have to understand that the gifts that they have comes from their culture, comes from their species, because again, you are not the only species to exist in this universe.
Let's talk about the Book of Enoch. I do think that this girl and this guy are looking in the correct general direction with what they're talking about, but I think they're getting the details wrong because there is some heavy misinterpretation going on. The Book of Enoch details the Watchers or fallen angels and their descent to earth, how they mated with human women and produced the Nephilim, which are giant offspring. That's in 1 Enoch 6 and 7. It also describes supernatural beings and their sins, but none of them are aquatic or mermaid-like. The Book of Enoch mentions various spiritual entities, like the spirits of the water in 1 Enoch 66, 1 and 2. There, angels are binding evil forces associated with the floodwaters of Noah's flood. However, these are abstract spirits, not physical beings, and it doesn't mention anything about them having fishtails or human features. Enoch just simply doesn't depict half human, half animal beings in the sea. Its focus is terrestrial and celestial, angels, giants, and cosmic judgment, not hybrid sea creatures. My best guess on this is that this lady got her information about what's in the Book of Enoch off of TikTok from a Billy Carson video, and it's steering her off path from finding the truth. I couldn't find anything in the Book of Enoch that I even feel like could be misinterpreted as talking about mermaids. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at berry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But with all that out of the way, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at berry-stepp.com.